Hello, this is a video for Project 6.8 on the Whack-A-Troll, and I wanted to start by looking at the rubric. The first thing in the rubric is to have a couple of billboards. This will mimic the previous project where you had one screen for the title and a different screen for the introductions or the instructions. You know how to do that. So I suggest you use PowerPoint, create those, and then put them in a billboard in the program. There's the timer and the scoreboard, which I'm going to go into detail. There's a mouse control, which you can put in the event area. The trolls are already provided in an array, but they need to be random, so we'll look at that. And then at the end, there's another billboard that says game over when it's finished, and I'll give you an idea about how to do that. So that's the points for this week's project. And I want to start by looking at the startup file that you got. At the end of the assignment, there's a zip file, Whack-A-Troll setup, where much of the setup portion of the program has been done for you. You'll need to add some billboards, but that's about it. And I want to look at that Alice program and start from there. So I've got it loaded. Here it is. It's the same one you have. And it comes with a method called random pop-up. Now to open that, I'm going to open that up. You should know how to open that by now. So here's random pop-up, and there's nothing in it. It's empty. We're going to start this program by actually declaring a variable. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to click up here and go down to the very bottom. See where it says add scene property? I'm going to click on that, and I get a screen much like a variable screen. And I'm going to put in the name time remaining. That's going to be the clock. So this is going to be a whole number or an integer, and it's going to start with 30. The book says about a minute. I think you'd be fine to have it last 30 seconds. That's plenty of time. So now that variable is created. Now in this random pop-up, all right, so the point of that variable is that when the game starts, it'll run for 30 seconds and then it will be over. So all our actions occur inside that loop of that time. That's the idea. So I'm going to put a while loop here. And where it says true, I'm going to replace that and say, well, let's do this while this whole number is greater than the whole number of time remaining is greater than 0. And we start out at 30 and it's going to count down. And when it gets to 0, we're done. All right. Now I need another variable, I think. Let me look and see what I have here. I've got another variable on here. It's already in your program. It's called random time. So I'm going to use that. And I'm going to do an assign statement. There's the random time. I'm just going to put 1 in. All right, now, instead of the 1, I'm going to go down here to random. And I'm going to pick the next random real number in the range from 0.5 to 0.75. And what's that going to be? That's going to be how long the troll stays visible. That's going to be random. We also have to get a troll up there. So I will do another assign. I'm going to grab the active troll. And the active troll is the troll out of the array trolls. Then I'll pick one. And then change that one to the next random integer from 0 up to but excluding, and I'll pick 1, and then change that 1 to the troll's length. So let's talk about this line. It takes the active troll from the list of trolls in the array, picks one at random from element 0, but excluding the troll number of the length, because you'll remember that the length of an array is one more than the number of elements. So it could throw an error if we didn't account for the length of the array. So that gives us a random troll appearing for a random amount of time. Having those two things there, then, we're going to pick the object, the active troll, and we're going to move it. And we're going to move it up, say 0.5. And we're going to move it up fairly quickly. So I'm going to make the duration 0.25. That'll have it move faster. So now that random troll moved up. And now if I go back to this, which is like the world, there's a delay function. I'm going to put that in there, and I'm going to delay the next line the random amount of time. So this is how long the troll stays up. Once that time runs out, and if I can get it there, I'm going to copy this to the clipboard and put it below the delay, and now I'm going to move him down the same amount. So he pops up, he sits there for a random amount of time between, I think I wanted this at 0.5 and 0.75, and then moves down. There's only a quarter second difference in the time. It's not that significant, but it makes a little bit of a difference. And then I want a little bit of a delay before the next guy shows up. So we'll put a 1 delay there, maybe a little less. I'm going to put 0.75. Then I'm going to do another assign statement. And I'm going to say time remaining is time remaining minus 1. And that will reduce the time left in the game. So all this does, this loop, it happens for the length of the game, and these trolls pop up and go back down in a random sort of way, and they stay up in a random amount of time. That's what the random pop-up does. Let's run it and see what happens. And it's done. All right, let's go over to the event listeners and let's add an event listener. Let's start with a mouse click on an object. And that's all we need to do with that one. Let's do this one. Collision start. Now on the collision start, this is when any one of the trolls comes in contact with the bowling pin. What has to happen when that happens? When the bowling pin hits the troll, what happens? Well, the score needs to be increased, right? So we need a method to handle increasing the score. So let's go back here and add a scene procedure, and we'll call it score method. It's empty right now. But if I go back to the event listener, here's the score method. It's listed now. And when the bowling pin hits one of the trolls, this score method will run. All right, so how does that work? Well, we need to add a couple of text files, text boxes, to the program. So let's go to set up the scene. And we've got this shapes and text right here. Now there's two things you need to do here. You're familiar with this because you get your billboard from here, and all these torus circles come from here as well. And the box, this is the box right here. So here's a text model. I'm going to drag this up here, and I'm going to call it score text. And down here in the value, I'm going to label it as score. That's going to be what's displayed. And it can be white, that's fine. And there it is. Need to raise it up a bit. I'm just going to play with this. And I think it's a little big. And the way you can reduce the size, besides using this resize button here, is just change the height. Yeah, I want to get more positive on this. Oh, maybe a negative 1.2. There we go. So that's position X is 0. Let's try a 0.8 or 1.2. Let's try 1.2. You can just play around with this, figure out where it goes. Where do you like it? Okay, I need to raise it up a little bit more. Maybe a little more than that. About there. All right. Now let's go back a little bit. Change Z. Negative 1.1. What does that do? Yeah, it takes it back. I'd like to have part of that circle disappear. Maybe about there. Okay. So there's your label for the score. And you would do the same thing for the timer. Timer would be over here. I'm going to get another text box, text model, and put up here. And I'm going to call it score count. And I'm going to make it a couple of X's. I'm going to use capital X's so I can see it. And there that is. Ooh, that's too far. Try 0.8. And 1.2. No, that's not enough. Okay. What do we do here? Negative 0.43 for Z, 0 for Y, and then X will be different. Oh, and I need to make the size smaller. Let's go to 0.2. There's my Y. You have to understand how all these things move the thing. I'm going to change this. Okay. Let's bring this down a little bit. Ooh, I got 50. That's about right. Okay, there's a good spot right there. Now I'm going to change the text to 0. There's my score. And you would need a text box for the time method as well, only it would be 30 when it starts. So there's my score text box. There's the score text, and here's the score counter. Score count. Now let's see what we can do this over here in the score method. So I'm going to create another variable. I'm going to add a scene property. I'm going to call it new score. And this will be an integer, whole number. And I'll give it a 1 to start. Now, if I go to score count, I have an option of setting a value. I'm going to set a custom text of blank, and then when I click on this, I can add to that a whole number called new score. So this is text. This takes an empty string and converts this actually, this new score, which defaults to 1, puts it in there. After this happens, I want to do an assign of the new score, and I want to add new score plus 1. So now after this runs, new score will be 2. So then the next time you hit a troll, the score count, which is what's displayed here, will display an empty string, so it doesn't take up any space, plus this new score, which will be 2. So let's run this and see what happens. Here's my bowling pin. There's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you hit them twice, you can add up your score a little more. The way to cheat on this game. So every time the bowling pin collides with one of the trolls, the score method runs and increases the score by 1 and displays the score. Whatever you see up on the billboard for the score is actually 1 less than the value of the score count. Because every time it runs, I add 1 to it. Okay, so let's talk about the timer then. Going back to our rubric, there's a billboard here. We did the random for the trolls. We did the mouse control. That works okay. We did the scoreboard. And you know how to do the 2 billboards. So the only thing left is this timer. How do we do that? Well, if we go back to the initialize event listener and add a listener, there's one up here at the top that says time. So let's add a time listener. And we'll do a 1. And we'll say if and do a whole number if the time remaining is greater than or equal to 0. We don't have a variable for the time yet. This code down here is going to be much like the code for the score. So we're going to need a text box to hold the time. So I'm going to do another text here. I'm going to call it time count. And I'm going to make it 30 to start because it's going to count down. I'm going to change the size to 0.2. I'm going to put z at negative 0.43. Bring it forward some. That's probably too much, but we'll see. Y. How much is y? 0.62 and negative 0.60. Okay, let's do that. And then on X, we'll make it, oop, that's too much. Probably close to negative 0.8. No, I need it over a little bit more. That's going to be too much. Let's try it could still come over a little more. When you do this stuff, you need to not be satisfied. Keep changing it until you're really satisfied with the way it looks. So here's the 30. Over here, you need some text that says timer, just like you did the score. You can go back and see how the score was done to do that. But here's this, it's called the time count. And we needed that so that we could do the time method, which I need to create that. We have a score method. Let's create a time method. It's empty. And if I go back here, I'm going to take this, copy it to the clipboard, and drop it here. And then back here, I'm going to grab the time method, well, delete this. I'm going to grab the time method and put it there. That's just a better way to program. So here's the time method. And I'm going to say, well, if we still have some time, I'm going to go here to the time count. And I'm going to set the value, just like I did in the other one, to an empty string. And then I'm going to add to that the whole number of time remaining. As much like we did on the score. And then I'm going to do an assign statement. And I'm going to reset time remaining to time remaining, and then do the math, time remaining minus 1. So see, it goes down each time. So now when I run the program, miss that first one. I have to work on that. I'll let you work on that, figure out why that first one isn't there. And this would say timer right here. It ended. And now what happens? Well, let's add one more procedure, and we'll call it game over. And this is where you would put in the code for the billboard to say the game's finished. Now, back in your first method, once the random pop-up ends, then you want to run this game over. If you create a billboard that says game over, one way to do it, a couple ways to do it. One way to do it would be to store that billboard behind this billboard and then bring it forward to fill the screen at the end of the game. That's the code that would go over here in game over, moving that billboard forward. Another thing you could do is make the billboard and put it up above here, like 10 above. And then you move it down 10 and it goes right in front of all this. this and it says game over. So those are some couple of ways you can do that. All right, so I hope this helps on project 6.8, and I'll be posting it.